Hi, so welcome to SydDT number 82. And tonight is our 8th birthday as well, as you might have. Congrats to everyone for making 8 years. So SydDT is now a community of over 8,700 odd.
We have a few long timers here.
We have a few.
We should give them a shout out. I mean, if you guys want to
Who was
stand up.
Who's
here
here?
at the beginning?
2015. Who came to meetups and there we go. See,
Stop.
yeah. You were around 2015, 2016. Way back when. 2016. There at the back. Who rocked up in the late 2010s, 2019, before lockdowns? Few more hands.
You definitely joined us in lockdown.
Yeah, who joined during lockdown? There we go. Who has spoken at a SydDT? Awesome. Couple in the room. And who is here for the first time? Welcome to SydDT. We don't have cake every month. Awesome people like this and beer and pizza and drinks. That isn't every month thing, and awesome people and content. So just to kick off, and actually the other thing is with aside from it being the 8th birthday, it's also Kate's going to lead us through the topic of will AI make me a designosaur? Kate's words. And to kick off, just want to acknowledge that we're on Gadigal country and pay my respects to elders past, present and future as well. We are hosted tonight by ThinkPlace. Thanks, Gina, the local rep. Anything you'd like to say?
Oh, I'm keen to.
House rules.
No, there's bathrooms at the back. No, just.
And I'm hoping enough by at least one person. What does ThinkPlace do?
So I'd say like the too long but don't read version is that we help our clients tackle some big and challenging problems through service design, strategic design, social behavior change, tactics, amongst a whole host of other things.
Lots of fun stuff. So hit up Gina if you want to know more. And you've got a
cool international work, and frankly, not that that was like the reason I was like.
there might be some wannabe interns in the audience as well. So massive thanks to ThinkPlace for hosting us and sponsoring. And every month, there's a little team of us that put this on and make it happen. So Kate, who's going to be speaking tonight as well. Zoe, Kylie, Lucas isn't here tonight. And since it's our 8th birthday, we'll give a shout out to Kingsley and also James Cooper, who were part of the original founding crew as well, way back in 2015. Dearly missed, in case you ever watch this. One, Kingsley's now in Canberra and James up the coast, so not here anymore. So thanks to the organising team. And what will pretty much be monthly shout outs, especially whenever I'm doing something these days. Who's heard about Interaction 24? One hand. Couple more hands. Yes, there we go. They're coming up now.
Doesn't count when it comes to
It's not the IXD 24 committee though. So, so Interaction Design Association as a global national body, and hopefully everyone knows about IXDA as well. IXDA Sydney specifically. So there's an annual global conference, and we, being Sydney, are going to be hosting it for the first time that's ever been hosted outside of North America or Europe. In February 25th, we kick off on the Sunday Arvo and go through to the Friday. There's a leap day in there as well. So Interaction 24, all things interaction design, the broad definition, it is a broad definition for interaction design, literally people interacting with anything. So it's all the usual visual interfaces and UX, UI, service design, but also out to built environments, communities, society, policy, all the things. So I know that's something that a lot of us in the room are into. So,
Did you take that photo?
no,
It's not part of your.
No, that's
photo
a business event Sydney contributed photo that
I was
one.
going to give the prompt for, ChatGPT to create it.
Yeah. That'd be a worthy experiment. Maybe something you can do as part of the activity this evening. So our theme for IXD24, which is the short version of that, is revisit, reframe, and regenerate. So broadly, what to look like for us to design for regeneration is really what we're looking at as part of that week. And it's a full week, so kick off on the Sunday Arvo, which is just some opening welcome drinks, education summit on the Monday, and the local leaders retreat. So all the IXDAs from around the world, the volunteer group that look after all of those, a bunch of those will come to Sydney as well, those people. And then the Tuesdays is workshops and then a 3-day conference. And opening, closing parties, lots of parties. So get involved. Super early bird tickets. There's a few left. So if you want to get in early, that QR code will jump you there. And our version 1 site, which is that screenshot, just went live today. So we finally got our first proper site up, which we'll iterate a lot yet. And I don't think we've got any others from the IXD24 through here tonight. So there we go, IXD24, keep a watch out. And now I get to hand over to Kate, who's going to have a chat about, will AI make me a Designosaur? All yours. Thanks, Kate.
Hear me okay? I just talk like this, fantastic. And I am not an expert on AI or generative AI. In fact, I'm probably at risk of becoming a Designosaur. I grew up 30 years from starting at print design, and I sort of run the full gamut of digital design, web design, mobile apps, what have you. Because I'm not an expert, I kind of wanted to just have an open discussion with you, because I imagine there's people in the room that know a lot more about AI and are using it for their work and for their personal life. And so, yeah, I'm keen to understand from you how you're using it. And to begin with, perhaps we could have a show of hands if indeed you do use generative AI. So has anyone used ChatGPT? Yeah, so probably half the room. Other generative AI programs like Midjourney, DALL, you have off the back. Most of the images in here are from Midjourney. That's my imaging app of choice if I'm going to use generative AI. We'll talk about why this particular image is so bad in a sec. But partly it's because I'm just not terribly patient when it comes to my prompts and perfecting my prompts. So, yeah, and just as a topic that I've been interested in, it feels quite new to me. It's really only this year that generative AI tools kind of hit the mainstream, where you could ask any particular crowd and half of them have used them and use them in their professional careers as well. So it's changing really, really rapidly. And I predict that as a designer, my career and the way that I'll be working and creating content is going to change quite dramatically over the coming years. Probably about 6 months ago, I became aware of generative AI imaging apps like Midjourney. And that's because in Instagram, I follow a lot of artists and I really enjoy watching their process. So I watch artists' videos of the process to create their work. And that's just my thing. I find it really fascinating and beautiful to see the creative process of work. And I noticed about 6 months ago, my Instagram feed was just flooded with these hyper-realistic, kind of surrealistic images. And they were mostly created by Midjourney. And it was kind of depressing to see them all and to know that the creative act was being reduced down to a text prompt in a tool, and that it was taking a minute to create something that would normally take days, weeks, months to create. So that existential angst is something that a lot of content creators are experiencing at the moment, because all of a sudden a lot of their efforts are being reduced down to text prompts. So I thought I'd just start with a few definitions, and I've only pulled this together this week when our previous speaker fell out, but so be gentle, but because I did go straight to Wikipedia to get this definition. And I kind of like it because so this is really talking about artificial general intelligence, so AGI. And the thing about AGI is that we're not there yet. It's still the stuff of science fiction, mostly. So this is a journey that we're on in terms of AI. And at the moment, it's hypothetical because we've not yet created an AI that has the full power and consciousness and sentience of a human or indeed an animal. And it does raise the question, how would we know when we get there? Would it be obvious when AI actually reaches that point of general intelligence where it can reason and it's aware of itself? I think it'd be pretty hard to tell. We do have a test, a hypothetical test, the Turing test, indeed. It was created back in 1950, Alan Turing, who was an amazing British scientist. He was into cryptology, and if you've seen the Imitation Game, you'll know his story. In fact, the Imitation Game was his name for the test, and the test is pretty simple. It's just if a human had a machine separated by a wall and another human separated by the wall, and if he communicated by, and the way Alan Turing described it, by text and had a conversation, that the human would be unable to determine which one was the AI. So in some regards, we're almost there. Like some of you might have read the New York Times article about the journalist who had a chat with ChatGPT, and this was GPT 3.5, so not even the latest version. And that conversation was creepy because the AI was kind of flirty and, you know, advising him to leave his wife, basically. So pretty weird. So this is a bit of a framework for thinking about where we are on the journey towards that level of general awareness and intelligence. And we've been on this journey for decades, started off during the Second World War with the reactive machines, so all pre-programmed to solve problems, simple problems like the trajectory of a missile. And then from there, we moved to limited memory. So this is where we start to look at machine learning. And machine learning is also decades old now. Where we are today is at the theory of mind. And the theory of mind, as a concept, is the point where you can recognize another human. So when machines can recognize a human and can read their emotional state, understand that human and their perceptions, and that point of understanding where they can actually manipulate you and have a conversation with you to their own ends, that's the theory of mind. And a recent study just months ago by Michael Kaczynski established that we are at that point, and that ChatGPT 4 kind of has the level of a 9-year-old in terms of their theory of mind. that they recognize when they're talking to a human, and that they, if you think about most 9-year-olds, they're persuasive. They can manipulate you. Anyone who's a parent in the room, that's where ChatGPT is now. So it's a little bit scary. We're not yet at that state of self-awareness where they understand their own existence and can modify their behaviour accordingly. But like I said before, how would we really know when they get to that point? You know what? After the singularity, when it all goes to fit, that's when we'll know. Okay, so generative AI is the thing that's rapidly come to attention over just this year. So it's so rapid that it changes from day to day and week to week in terms of the new apps that are available and the sophistication of those apps. It's really almost impossible to keep up with. And it's basically a type of AI that starts with a text prompt. In the case of Midjourney here, it just starts with that one word, imagine. And then you can type in your prompt, and as you get better with those prompts, you get a much better result. I'm not very good, but yeah, it all begins with the prompt and the quality of the prompt. And then the results are really quite speedy. You'll get an image in less than a minute, or text, or video, or other things. So who's behind it? So it's all of the big technology companies that you can see here. The thing that I want to point out here is it's not academics, it's not government, it's technology companies, they're commercial. And the thing about commercial interests is that they're guided by profit. And that's why the development in generative AI and AI in general is happening so fast, because there's immediate profit to be made in this area, which does raise ethical concerns because governments can't keep up. We don't have regulations in place. There's really no laws in place to guide and govern the responsible use of AI. So OpenAI is probably the most well-known of all of the generative AI because it powers a lot of different generative AI apps like Midjourney, like DALL. It's owned by Microsoft, and Microsoft is now introducing OpenAI into its search engine Bing. Google is doing a similar one. It's in beta. It's in beta release, and that's Bard. Neither Bing or Bard are quite as advanced as ChatGPT. And if you've used ChatGPT, you've probably already realised that there's a lot of inaccuracy. So it's probably 90% factual and 10% will be completely made up. And the problem with that is, how would you know? Unless you actually are an expert in a field, it's hard to pick the fiction when most of it sounds like fact. And Bing and Bard also suffer from that. And because they're both made by search engines, you just assume that search engines will deliver factual results, but they don't always do that. What's that?
I'd say they haven't for a long time with the way that SEO is trying to force people to create content to the point where it's not really factual.
Not at all. So Google's also in the process of creating Vertex AI, which if you're familiar with ChatGPT, when you put a prompt into it, and you can put a really big prompt, so you can put all of your results from your user research into ChatGPT, and it will summarize and give you back the insights, the key points of relevance from that textual research. So yeah, so you can put a lot into it. Now the problem with that is that you're putting data into a system that's learning from what you put in and sharing that back with other users. So it's not secure. So you probably don't want to put your personal IP, or we're not supposed to use it for work or put anything sensitive into it, because it's hosted on the cloud, and the actual large language model, which is continually learning from the prompts that are put in, that data could potentially be shared elsewhere. So Vertex AI by Google is kind of like a closed platform for businesses that enables them to work on top of that large language model and protect the data. So that's yet to be released, but it probably won't be long. IBM has had Watson for a long time. And Meta it's very hard to know what Meta's doing in this space, because like Google, Meta is really making most of their money from advertising, and I imagine most of their generative AI and their AI research will be around better tracking of users and greater ability to personalize your ads.
You might, like, I don't know if you came across this in your research, but it's also a question for the group. Did you come across anyone trying to adversarially kind of data dump into anyone else's like models?
I don't know, but have you heard of that happening?
That was a thing 7 years
Yeah.
ago that people worried about, if
Yeah.
like you hackers could adversarially mess with your model, but like looking at these brands, like they have all the incentive to mess with each other.
Yeah, I know. So don't know, but so yeah, so it's all commercial interest, and it will take a long time, I think, before governments catch up with the subtle complexities and unintended consequences of the use of AI in order to regulate. You might know about the open letter that the scientists, the data scientists from these companies gave to the government in the US, calling for not a moratorium on the unfettered development of generative AI, but just a pause to slow down on the development, because we simply do not know what's likely to happen. And these tools in the hands of bad actors, you just don't know what could happen. So just to slow down on the development. I'm not sure where we are with that open letter, but this is from the data scientists who are responsible for creating this. They're closest to the actual tools in terms of understanding how they could be used. So thinking about design specifically, this changes from week to week, and every week there's a new tool or a new plugin for Figma, which is powered by OpenAI or some other generative AI platform. This is just a handful that I know of people using within my work and my sphere. Adobe's pouring heaps of money into this. They've released Sensei, which is an AI app that enables designers and non-developers to create apps and websites. There's images and multimedia, there's video. And when you think how intensive it is for a computer to create video from scratch, it's really quite extraordinary how we're able to create video from a prompt, but that's happening. And of course, Canva is doing a lot of work in this space. So yeah, there's just a lot happening. And it's, like I said, it's changing so quickly from week to week that as a designer in your own practice, it's hard to keep up and understand how these tools can actually augment your process and where the efficiencies are going to be. So in the world of AI generated images, and going back to the flood of images that I experienced on my Instagram, a lot of them are not created by artists, but the ones that I find really interesting are the ones that are created by artists. So a lot of photographers, a lot of art directors that I know and designers are using Midjourney, and conceptually they're actually using the tool to serve a real communication purpose. So this is Tim Tadder, photographer. He's been working for 30 years. He's a career photographer and experimenting with generative AI. And, you know, that's his quote. So he's excited about it, but not because of the quality of the images that it creates, more about augmenting his own capabilities and doing things that he can't do today with a traditional camera. So I spoke before about ChatGPT. A lot of the generative AI tools are really around this type of content creation, so text-based content. So ChatGPT, if we actually break down the name, firstly it's a chatbot. So it's basically just a field to enter your prompt. And DPT, because it's generative, it's generating text, it's pre-trained. So just on that pre-training, it's extraordinarily expensive. And this is the reason why only big commercial technology companies can afford to do this. It's so draining on energy. It's a little bit like crypto mining, and it takes years for each release. So each release of ChatGPT is frozen in time. And so the latest release, ChatGPT 4, if you asked it about recent news, it knows nothing about that. It's really no good for current affairs because it's frozen in time in terms of that release. And the data that it was trained on is also frozen in time. So, you know, you can see this is ChatGPT 3. So I think I put this prompt in a couple of months ago. And if you remember in Brasilia, the storming of the presidential palace after Bolsonaro was voted out, it was kind of like a Jan 6 moment, but in Brasilia. ChatGPT knew nothing about that. But the thing that it did was it made something up. So it just gave me a totally nonsense reply, but it sounds real. So it gave me the previous president, Dilma Rousseff, who was actually a left-wing president, nothing like Bolsonaro. And yeah, completely made up, but sounds credible. So the other thing just about large language models, there's two types of learning, supervised and unsupervised. Supervised is when a human fine-tunes the language model. So there is some human learning. But on this scale, you can't rely on humans to actually fine-tune tens of thousands of terabytes of data. So that means that the way these apps learn is it's basically all self-learning. So they're looking for patterns, and when they create an answer to your text, it's a predictive model, so they're literally just predicting the next word in a sentence based upon the terabytes of data, based upon all of Wikipedia and every single book that's been scanned in. It's literally just predicting the next word. There's no intelligence there. doesn't know what the answer is or what the sentence is going to be. It's just predicting the next word. So who uses it? So I said it's all happening really fast. And the ChatGPT, it's the fastest growing app ever in the history of man. So, so it 100 million users in 2 months. So that's the rate of adoption that we're looking at. And it, you know, Facebook isn't even on here. So it's pretty astonishing how quickly people have taken up ChatGPT. And of course, ChatGPT is the basis of other apps. So a lot of people are probably using it, not realizing that they're using it. And just on the, you'll hear the term hallucinations. This is just the fake stuff. That's so hard to pick because it all sounds credible. It's perfectly constructed sentences. It's grammatically correct. There's no typos. It looks journalistic in quality when you get a response out of ChatGPT, but a lot of it is complete fiction and you won't know. So some of you might have read. Yeah, so this was just in the last week. The lawyer. Yeah. So this lawyer, Stephen Schwartz. He had a court case. His client was on a Colombian plane and it was a damages issue because he was hit by a trolley on a plane. Pretty standard type of thing. So the lawyer decided, there'll be precedents for this. I'll just put it into ChatGPT. And his defense, the lawyer's defense for misleading the court, was that he just thought it was a search engine. Interesting to know how much he charged for defending his client. So here's another example that was also in the news fairly recently. This image won first prize in the World Photography Award in the creative category. And the photographer, Boris Eldgudson, I think he's German, as soon as he was awarded first prize, he said, look, I'm not accepting this because this was created with, I think it was probably Midjourney. Anyway, it's fake. And the disturbing thing about that is this a really beautiful image. Some people find it a little bit creepy because I don't know if you've noticed, but it's a little bit cropped out, but there's a hand on her right shoulder and it doesn't belong to anyone. So that's a little bit disturbing. But it's still a really beautiful image. And, you know, it's not hard to recognize beauty, but it's incredibly hard to create it if you're an artist. So there's so many opportunities for faith with generative AI. So getting back to my dinosaur, and I'll be totally honest, I'm not very good with generative AI or Midjourney. I'm impatient. I don't put in good prompts. This is my first go. Can anyone pick what's wrong? I mean, there's a lot of things wrong with this image. There's a lot of weird artifacts because remember, all of Midjourney is just averaging. It's been trained on millions and millions and millions of images. It's just averaging them out to predict the next pixel based on all of those images. So
I mean, I feel like that's an accurate representation of myself when I'm with a computer. So,
looking at it, I was trying to figure out whether it's actually two screens, but yeah, I think it is just facing the wrong way. So Midjourney doesn't know that. Midjourney doesn't even know that's a computer. computer. It just it's still text-based because all of those prompts are tagged to certain concepts that map to images. And yeah, if I was a little bit more patient, I would have tried a few more times to get a better image. The other problem is bias. So with all AI, there is that challenge of bias because it's only as good as the data that has gone into the system, and that data is created by humans, and humans bias. So, so if you put in, so this is Midjourney again, and for my prompt, the most famous designer in the world, you'll notice they're all men, white men, few beards. You wanted more than that. This is what it gives you. So that's some examples of the bias that is inescapable with large language models. And these are, yeah. Well, yeah, there is that. Yeah.
Should be.
I feel like if I had a modern illness, I wouldn't be presented with her. And then I guess the really exciting but also equally terrifying area is generation of code. So GitHub was the first to release Copilot on its platform, so generative AI, that basically searches all of the code in GitHub that's uploaded in basically an open source system. But there is a lawsuit at the moment, a class action around the appropriate use of code in that scenario. It's never actually been legally tested that in this example that they can use that code for training their own generative AI. But there's a host of other apps springing up left, right, and centre that will go from a pencil sketch to a programmed app. So that creation of code, which is such a skill in itself, and there's so many different languages out there. We're talking about years and years of training to get to the point where you can code. That's how it's creating efficiencies and a bit of existential angst for a lot of developers. Translation is a huge area as well. This is not particularly new. So a lot of us have been using Google Translate. It's pretty useful, but the thing is it's getting much faster and much better at an exponential rate. And the other area of translation is voice to text. Generative AI can also translate audio, which is pretty useful, particularly for designers that are doing lots of interviews, and it's always tedious having to transcribe the audio files to text. So thinking about our creative process as designers and moving from, across the double diamond, I think the main opportunities here, rightly or wrongly, for generative AI to change our process and to augment our design process really starts with discovery. So Whisper is one of those apps which will take all of your audio files, video files, translate them into text. ChatGPT can then extract the main insights for you from that research. We also have interview bots, which really came from the world of recruitment. So they've been around for a little while. Some of you have experienced what it's like to be interviewed by an AI. But that also has huge potential for doing user research and user testing. Also simple things like writing interview scripts. When I use ChatGPT, whether it's for work or for my personal life, I just wrote a leasing agreement for my car space, and ChatGPT did an awesome job of that. But normally I find I have to go in and edit it. So in my work context, I have enough knowledge about my sphere that I can edit it and I can pick out what's wrong, and it does save me time, it does augment my process. But yeah, there's a huge opportunity in discovery. In Define, really, where we're trying to take all of those insights and find the nuggets that are really going to inform the design process. There's already a little bit terrifying. There's an app that will create your personas for you. So synthetic users, it's called. So don't do that. There's no shortcut for actually talking to users. I'm really hopeful that designers will still be responsible, and design researchers responsible for this process of engaging users, understanding their needs, and transcribing those into prioritized backlog. But yes, synthetic users is one way to shortcut that with no data. And also just ChatGPT, you can create a persona in ChatGPT and it will sound credible. So moving into the design phase, this is, yeah.
But before you move into the design phase, the synthesis of research data, like the fact that you like absolutely writing into these scripts, all of that stuff, super useful, efficient, get it? I haven't seen, like for me, there is such a like that it's almost like the art of the synthesis. Like I haven't seen examples where that happens, where you probably don't do it, because it's not that black and white, and it's not that, it's only through the process that you end up getting those insights. Is that your experience or anyone else?
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, I mean, it's useful for like voice of customer, but you've got themes that are consistently going on. But if you're doing this type, it's nothing and through.
For the, yeah, when there's large amounts of data, sentiment tracking and things like that.
I think.
Yeah, with the qualitative, that's where being able to extract the text-based comments and conversation and find the themes, the patterns. That's what generative AI is really good at, identifying patterns. And that's where it can save time. I still think all of this needs to be mediated by a design researcher, a human, because at the end of the day, you need to persuade stakeholders that this is true. And that truth is, it's hard to rely on.
So therefore, if the efficiency of the process can be improved.
Yeah.
I think that's the value now.
In the design space, there's already loads out there to make this quicker and easier. Most designers find it icky, the idea that you could create a logo with an AI tool. Logo design is such a unique skill that requires user training. And most of the results, like trained designers, are still pretty unhappy with the emergence of a lot of these apps that are not resulting in a better quality of design. They remember that generative AI is all about averaging, and a lot of the results are very average.
This is more of a comment than a question.
I think the lure definitely of the AI stuff is the fact that most consumers want something that is the same but slightly different. And that's it.
Yeah.
That's extremely reductive. So like, even though we want to do beautiful design pieces and stuff like that, until everyone is very, very sick of this, I've called it the mad cow disease of AI, or it's feeding itself. Then like, only then will people want something that's like looks a little bit different. Because we're trained to see novelty. It's like the does everyone know what Instagram faces?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
Horrible.
so there are women who are spending their cash. I would try to judge, trying to essentially look like Kim Kardashian, and it can be like thousands, like $27,000 a month sort of deal. That a whole league of psychological studies will say humans are attracted to novelty. Once they see things that they're saying repeatedly, we get bored. So that's my comment. I think there will come a time where there is like, we have mined the data as much as we can, and we'll just simply be bored of it.
Well, you used to do it, and
Oh, for sure.
very basic now. They used to have a lot of identity, each of those big companies, and now they all look really similar to each other. I have no idea. And I don't know, like an example that comes to mind these days, my friend ranted about it, and now I can't see it, so now I'm gonna ruin it for you all. Isn't the Kia one? Well, Kia and got the K. It's not, I mean, I know I'm a little young to be going, oh, the old design is good, why didn't you but the new design is dumb.
Yeah. Just
Same now, and there's a user experience issues.
yeah, there's definitely an averaging out when it comes to user experience.
Say is true of that. I mean, can you actually tell the difference between any of the stuff in any given?
That's why all these artists keep coming, but they want new sound stuff. We are trained for that. And I'm actually really optimistic about it. I'm seem to be the only person.
Generated music, but yeah, not the angle. I think generative AI is capable of novelty at the hands of humans, mediating
The whole thing that
creation.
doesn't have.
Exactly. And it's changing so rapidly that next week this landscape will be different to this week.
So order is something that everyone needs to look for. That's my homework for tomorrow, personally. That if it's an LLM that's been trained on other LLMs, so it's now imitating how children learn. That's getting interesting because suddenly it's a model that can run on mobile phones and laptops. That's where now it's getting interesting. Everything leading up to this point has been novelty. Now it's getting
Just to finish off on this slide around delivery, huge opportunities there as well. So I spoke about coding, developing, machine translation, customer support is a huge one. Think chatbots. So that's been going for a long time, but they're getting better. There's still a handoff with customer support. There's still a point where the chatbot becomes a human on the other side. But it's changing so quickly. Marketing and advertising is just a massive space. I mean, this has all been commercially driven. And so it makes sense that with Google and Meta behind a lot of this research, that this space is the fastest growing and in some respects the most scary in terms of personalizing content and manipulating users and tracking their behavior on in a way that's invisible, that we're really not aware of. So just finishing up, so this is Jeffrey Hinton. He was the chief scientist at Google. He was really a veteran. He retired about a month ago. He left because he was so alarmed at the crazy and unfettered rate of progress of generative AI, and he did not believe he could talk about it and still maintain his role at Google. And his fear is that generative AI is not being regulated at all. It's commercially driven, and that in combination with personal data and everything we know about how to manipulate people, all of the dark patterns that every designer understands how to use, is going to result in some really unfortunate consequences that are really hard to predict. And these are his words. So you need to imagine something more intelligent than us by the same difference that we're more intelligent than a frog. And it's going to learn from the web. It's going to have read every single book that's ever been written on how to manipulate people and also seen it in practice. So a lot of data scientists agree with him, and that's why they've put their names to that open letter to slow down this rate of progress, just to slow it down so that governments are in a better position to regulate it and to protect citizens from unintended consequences and from bad actors. You know, they're out there. But finishing on a lighter note, so thinking about ourselves, designers, we're in an incredible position where we can actually partner with technologists a lot of the time and really look at how we protect our end users, our customers that we're designing for, and establish an ethical framework for using generative AI in our own practice. There are a few questions that I have around how it's going to change my role. And, you know, it's already democratizing design by putting these tools in the hands of non-designers. Is that a good thing? I don't know. We're still waiting to find out. And how are we going to use these tools to augment what we do? How are we going to use them to actually make ourselves better designers and better at a craft? At the moment, it just feels like an arms race, and feels to me like we need to slow down, but I don't have any faith that that's going to happen. So for me personally, as a designer, I'm just trying to keep up with it and start to use it in positive ways that help my own practice. And I guess, you know, the question that every designer should be asking is it safe? So is it safe for people? Is it safe for the users that you're designing for? So that's a thought starter. And we spoke about cake before. If you would like to share your ideas, your hopes and fears, and there are cupcakes up here.
You can do the sticky note thing.
Hopes or fears?
That's a hope.
Oh, good. I didn't actually read it.
We're comparing results.
is a good one. That is a great one.
It's not fucking doing it and I'm disappointed.
Not yet, not yet.
So where's it yet?
So far it doesn't solve any problems that I didn't already have.
What's happened to all the post-its? Have you earned yours?
Just making sure. We need hopes and we need fears. We get cupcakes. You want to wrap up?
Final wrap up. So final couple of slides, which are mostly shout outs for, thank you, next month. So SydDT number 83. Next month is July. Yep, it is. Good. So 13th of July, our meetup will be part of Plastic Free July. So does everyone know about Plastic Free July? Come along next month. I'm telling you. So that was nice and easy. Hit that QR code, go to your usual meetup. So if you go to the meetup page now, you'll be able to go to the link for the Plastic Free July website, where they do actually have a 31-day challenge. Oh, teasers. And then Signa's meetup on the 6th of July is part of NAIDOC week. And the topic on that one is finding your voice. And that will be at Canva space. So not far from here, Back Street. And one thing I forgot to say about Interaction 24 is on the 1st of July, so 2 weeks away, we'll be opening up the call for speakers. So if you're keen to speak at Interaction 24 or run a workshop, then check out the website. And I think that's it. I've got to go all the way back to this card.
No, for that one.
Interaction 24.
For the call to speakers.
IXDA.org. It's on the homepage. It's right there, ready and waiting. You'll find the page. And we're now going to continue the conversation with all your hopes, fears, and dreams at the Strawberry, only around the corner. So we'll have to get out of here quickish and go to the pub. But thanks everyone for coming for our 82nd meetup and 8th birthday. Hope you all had fun, met some new people.
Take a cupcake.
You learned them now. I'll see you next month.